Our Ask Reddit by Reddit Universe. When did your something's not right here gut feeling ever save you? I went to hospital with shortness of breath and my heart racing. They did a chest x-ray, blood test for blood clots, ECG, and a few other tests but all came back normal. After observing me overnight everything still looked good. Oxygen saturation was perfect. My heart rate was still a bit elevated but nothing too crazy. And it seemed that it was likely leftover symptoms from a bad virus that I'd had a week or so earlier. The doctor asks me how I would feel if they sent me home and I just had a bad feeling about it all. I told him as such and that I had no real basis for it except that I just felt off about it. He said fair enough. Let's try one more test and if that comes back negative then we'll send you up to general medicine and see if they can track something down. That test was a VQ scan that found despite all other tests showing no results for blood clots, I actually had a whole bunch of them in both lungs. I ended up with a diagnosis of unprovoked bilateral pulmonary embolisms and am on blood thinners for life. Super grateful both for the bad feeling and the doctor who was willing to listen to it. I was 15 years old and my mom dropped me off at McDonald's to get breakfast while she went across the street to get Starbucks. It was a shopping mall in suburbia and we were on the way to pick up a new kitten a few hours away. Instead of walking the 100 yards to my mom I sat outside waiting for her to pick me up. Teenagers I guess. As I'm standing there a guy in an old station wagon with two kids in the back starts talking to me. He asks me where I'm going and I say whatever town it was. He says he's going there too with his kids and asks if I want to come. I tell him no that my mom is across the street and he comes closer. My gut is saying something is off so I see a random woman walk out of Starbucks and I point to her and say that's my mom right there. He freaked out and left really quick. I still remember those two kids in the backseat. They looked so off. I wonder to this day if they are okay. My boyfriend and I were visiting friends for a week in Phoenix. We girls were lounging at the pool while the guys were flexing their grilling skills. My boyfriend paused a moment, stood very still then told me to go get dressed. We had to go. Right now. I wanted to fuss but something told me not to. We drove straight through to San Antonio right to his parents' very rural house. Before cell phones and they didn't have a landline within a half mile. Seconds before we arrived his little sister had jumped off of a rain barrel and landed on a metal spike that went straight up through her foot and into her leg. His dad was at work so there was no car available there. She was bleeding like crazy and his mother had just walked out and found her. I don't know what spoke to him in Phoenix, but it would have been all bad if we had not arrived exactly when we did. I'm not sure if there is a correlation but I noticed your name fits perfectly to the situation. We were looking at houses a while back, and found one that was great location, would have been perfect size for us, and didn't appear to need any work other than new carpet, and stuff I wanted to do like painting and switching the over from oil burning furnace. I just had a nagging feeling about it, and my husband agreed. As much as we loved it something was off with it. I actually thought ghost or something silly like that face with tears of joy, and we ended up passing on it. I was still kicking myself about it until a few months later when it had a major electrical fire. The whole house and everything in it was a total loss, and the family that lived there barely got out alive. I smelled burning plastic early in the morning at my family cottage and almost went back to sleep. I was around 15, but got up to investigate. A socket on the outside of the building had caught fire and flames were shooting up the wall. The rest of my family was still sleeping and there wasn't enough smoke for the alarms to go off. I ran and got the fire extinguisher, got my dad up, and put it in his hands and pointed him towards the fire, stopped it and called the fire department. My mom dropped my 3-year-old brother off at daycare before she had to work in the morning. When she got to work she had this terrible feeling something was wrong with him. She ended up leaving work and drove to the daycare. She found the daycare lady inside sleeping while the daycare kids, including my brother, were running around the pool. My brother never went back to that daycare again. Weird experience with a daycare here too. Started a new one, dropped the kid off with bottles etc. Made a surprise visit with the wife about lunch and found our kid exactly where we left her, in the car carrier with the same, now curdled, bottle and a full diaper. Took the kid and left, never went back. I was going to meet up with someone from Marketplace to buy a phone and the feeling hit me, so I called the woman and a man answered, trying to play off the fact he's a man, and I passed by where we were meeting at and it was dark and I heard voices in the background on the phone call. I never stopped the car and kept going. Pretty sure I saved myself from at the very least a mugging, but learned a good lesson. Always meet in a public place. You can meet at police stations. I believe most are okay with this. I was driving and it started to snow. I noticed that I was going a bit fast and strongly sensed I should slow down. I did, and a couple seconds later I came up around a bend with the road suddenly being covered in ice. I started to fishtail while sliding directly towards two people standing outside their car. They had wrecked in the same manner that I was about to do and were standing outside their car, with me heading straight for them. I quickly thought of my options and ended up doing a hard right straight into the highway barrier. I slid nearly 100 plus feet, dragging the front of my car to slow it down. Because I had decided to slow down, I was able to give the two guys enough time to get out of the way before I slammed into their cars. Even though I totaled my car, which was sad, I did not end up killing two people that night. The police did not end up ticketing anyone thankfully, and they finally sanded the road after we had all wrecked. LOL, snow while driving still scares me to this day. My mother had a student die last week in a similar accident. He was helping someone who slid off the road and another car crashed into them both, killing all three. I am so glad your story had a better outcome. My dad had to go to court to settle a way overdue payment for the place he worked at. He was going to take me with him so I can be more exposed to the adult world, so to speak. However, that meant he would have to leave the office back door unlocked so the rest of the staff could clock in. He suddenly didn't feel right about it and decided to have me man the office instead. He got T-boned outside the courthouse on the passenger side of the car that day. The car was totaled and I would have gotten severely hurt if I was there. I was walking to the barber shop, and for some reason, everything just felt off. I ignored the feeling, but every step I took just made me feel like something wasn't right. So I decided to just go grab some food and come back. While I was eating, I saw police cars and ambulances driving to around where I was before. It turns out there was a murder. Now I always listen to my gut feeling. I had gone to this bar back home with a few friends, and afterwards everyone was supposed to go to this house party. I was game to go from the moment I was invited. Halfway through the night I had this gut feeling to not go. I told my best friend that she shouldn't go, but she insisted that she wanted to go because there were a few cute guys there. I couldn't shake the feeling that we shouldn't go, but she talked me into it. When we got in my car to head to the party, the guy feeling was worse. I grew up around cars and drive a manual. My best friend is completely clueless when it comes to cars. So I deliberately grinded the gears and jerked the car and made it stall, acting like something was wrong. I pretended to try to fix what wasn't broken, and after about 15-20 minutes of fixing my car, cops and fire trucks followed by EMS flew by us. I fixed my car but told my best friend that I just wasn't feeling well, and she agreed and said my car breaking down ruined her mood. So we went back to my place to watch movies. About an hour after getting home, we got a call from a friend of ours saying that the girl who owned the house and who was throwing the party was cheating on her husband, who was deployed and came back in leave to surprise her and caught her in bed with his buddy. Dude pulled a gun and started shooting at this girl and his friend while everyone else fled the house. I had a gut feeling I should pull my wallet and phone out of my purse. Not even 20 seconds later, I get mugged. The man dragged me across the sidewalk and stole my purse, but all he ended up getting was a juice box and my birth control. What flavor was the juice box? And what flavor birth control? Few years back I went to uni in Brussels. I would always take the train to get there. One morning I just woke up and didn't feel great at all. Keep in mind I have had a horrible flare-up of Crohn's for the last weeks. But this felt different. Guess it was my gut. So instead of pushing through it like I did with Crohn's, I decided to stay home for once. This was the only day out of 2 that I ever stayed home from uni. That day the terror attack happened on the train that I usually ride to get to uni. I was hanging out with friends at a bar but then going to head to my friends to stay the night. We drove separately though. It was in a city with a super high crime rate and in an even rougher part of town. We left the bar at like 3 AM and the drive wasn't far, but I was really low on gas and wasn't sure if I was going to make it. I'm not normally a person who's paranoid over city neighborhood crime rates, and I spent like half my time in this city and in the area we were in anyway, so it wasn't foreign to me by any means. Even so, just to be on the safe side, I picked a gas station that was well lit and at a relatively busy intersection. I was the only car at the gas station, and when I pulled up to the pump I luckily took a moment to text my friend that I'd catch up with him in a few minutes. As I'm doing that, though, another car pulls up right on the other side of the pump that I was at. I have no idea what made me pause, but I just waited a second to let them get out first. But I had to keep waiting, because they weren't getting out. At first, I thought that maybe they were taking a moment to get their wallet, text someone, just doing something. I couldn't see through the window tint at all, though, but I also tried to not stare at them or make it super obvious. I'm also not a very intimidating guy. I waited it out for 5 minutes and then started getting more worried. I texted my friend to tell him exactly where I was. I couldn't leave because I didn't have enough gas to get anywhere else, and I didn't want to just drive to my friend's place in the event that they followed me. Another 10 minutes later, the car pulled off. No one ever got out to get gas, including me. I just headed to my friend's and decided to risk getting there on what I had left in my tank. I'm not sure what made me that paranoid in that moment, but I'm really f***ing glad I hesitated. Not quite sure if it was a gut feeling, but kinda close. It was Christmas Eve night in my childhood house. Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse, and my mom had gotten a large TV for my dad and hid it in my doorless closet along with some other presents. At one point in the night, she had come back into my room to retrieve one of the smaller items and ended up moving the TV right in front of my wall heater, and didn't put it back. I didn't notice and went to sleep a little later. I don't know if it was the smell or a gut instinct, but thank God I woke up, because that night early the next morning I woke up to find my room filling with smoke and a nice orange glow coming from the back of the TV box. Luckily no large flames had formed yet, and I was able to stop it simply by moving the box out of the way, and of course turned off the heater and evacuated the room. The smoke wasn't super bad, so the house didn't get too much and my room eventually stopped smelling of it. TLDR, mom almost burned the house down en masse, but I woke up in time to stop it. Edit. To all asking about the TV, it was fine, but thank you for your concern. Not mine, but my dad's. I was downstairs helping him with some woodworking when I was 10 or 11. He went to run a 2x4 through the table saw when he noticed I was at his elbow rather than behind him. He stopped and told me to never stand behind a board when it's going through the saw in case it gets thrown. I thought he was being overly cautious and I didn't have as good of a view from behind him, but whatever. I got behind him. He flipped on the saw and ran the board through. He only got one stroke 3 of the way through, though, when the blade hit a knot and flung the 2x4 hard enough to crash against the wall 10 feet behind. If I hadn't moved it would have hit me square in the chest and could have killed me. One time when my little sister and I wandered off in Superstore, a strange man was standing behind us in the toy aisle and I was getting super weird vibes about him. Keep in mind I was only around 9-10, and he also looked super shady. He had a big hoodie, dark sunglasses, you name it. Just screaming serial killer, so obviously my first thought was to just move away from him because we could just look at different toys anyways. No, apparently not. He just kept following us but maintaining a small distance at the same time, and eventually I whispered to my sister that a man was following and we started walking in circles around different aisles to lose him until we found our dad. I remember how he looked at us one last time before walking away. I was scared of strangers for a while after that, even though I was really outgoing as a kid. I was afraid he'd followed us home for some reason. And looking back on it now, he could have been trying to snatch us or something, but maybe he just wanted to help, but I'm pretty sure there was something wrong with him. I don't know if it saved me, but years ago my so at the time had a coworker that kept inviting us out to drink. I had never met the guy and was wondering why he seemed so eager to meet me, especially since I wasn't even old enough to drink at the time. He eventually told my ex that we should come over to his place for drinks, in order for me to partake. I remember around this time creeping his FB and seeing the Squirrelly guy posing in front of his Honda. Something about it all made me laugh and wonder, why does this 20-something-year-old want to go to such lengths to hang out with a 17-year-old girl he knows is taken? A couple years later he is arrested on a multitude of child pornography and sexual assault charges. They seized several devices that proved he'd been doing shit with children and animals since he was at least 13. Cherry on top, local star cop's son, woman face palming. I went out with my best friend on New Year's last year and were having drinks with her friends when I realized I was out of cigarettes. I left for a few minutes to walk over and grab a pack and ended up talking to a homeless guy for a while. And when I went over to the entrance of the bar, she was outside and said something mean to me for no reason and walked off. I was confused, so I decided it would be good if I took a walk to let her cool off and then figure out what she was upset about. I was going to walk down the street for a bit, but something told me to turn left, walking behind the bar and then turning to the side of the bar when I see a girl laying down on the sidewalk and people walking by her. As I'm walking over to help, I realize it's my friend and she's not very conscious. She was probably drugged while I was getting smokes, and who knows what would have happened if I hadn't decided to go that way. Scares the shit out of me. So, it technically didn't save me. It would have. Anyway, a couple months after my 10th birthday we went on family vacation to visit my dad's side of the family. They lived a state away. My mom was about 6 months pregnant with my only baby brother at the time. We got to our hotel at about 2 o'clock and by 3 o'clock we decided we wanted to make the most of the day and go to the aquarium. I got fully dressed and ready to go, and suddenly I was hit with this crippling feeling of dread. At that age I'd never experienced anything like it. Pure anxiety. But I knew. I just fucking knew if we waited 5 minutes I would be fine. I tried telling my mom this and she was having none of it. I even tried to just stall her by begging. No. Got dragged, not literally lol, out of the hotel and into the car. We pull out of the parking lot and get T-boned so hard we do a 180 into oncoming traffic. As soon as we all realized we were okay, I was like, yeah, there it is. I've never let either of them forget it either, lol. And thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Reddit Universe.